Hello, people, and today I have with me a man known for his amazing vocal range on shows like Ben 10 Omniverse, Shaolin Chronicles, and Looney Tunes Show, Mr. Eric Bauza.
That is an intro, if I ever did hear one.
Oh, thank you. And how are you doing today, good sir?
I'm good. I've been through. I just got home from a breadwinners session, so I'm all beat up, and so that's good. It makes for a good interview.
Oh, thank you. Now let's start with the questions. What is it that got you interested in voice acting?
Well, I actually started out as a character layout artist in animation first. So, being a cartoonist and just being, able to draw, and that's how I got first exposed and involved into animation. And after that, I kind of started to make buddies, and the buddies that I made friends with, they started making their cartoons, and they knew that I liked doing voices and imitations and all that stuff. So I guess one thing led to another, and I guess over a span of, gosh, I don't even know how long. I started interning at Spumco in 1999, 2000 back then, and it's taken all that time to transist from that to where I am now, and it's one of those things where you just can't really predict where you're going to end up, and I'm kind of glad things are the way they are now.
And what was it like when you got your first voice acting job?
It was good. It was pretty much like me trying to get a voice on one of a cartoon that was done by John Kay, the creator of the Ren and Stimpy show. And the first voice I actually ever did for him was the voice of Future Cat, this cat from the future that could take telepathic dumps into his litter box. That's the future of where felines are headed. Just in case you guys were wondering at home,
he was a bit of a nerd, and he could take a dump from across the room. And oh yes, he was the pet of the man from next Thursday.
and yeah, it was just a weird character, and that's all John's doing.
Lord knows what dogs will be like in the future.
Oh, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. But cats, I guess I could deal.
Right. And what are some of your favorite roles that you've done for voice acting?
Well, for me, it always goes back to the classics, and I had the opportunity and the honor to do the voice of Marvin the Martian for the Looney Tunes show, as you had described in my extravagant introduction. And oh yes, isn't that lovely? Oh, peachy. Yeah, I mean, Mel Blanc, obviously, for many other voiceover artists, much I'm assuming for you guys too, is such a good example and inspiration of just the magic of voiceover, that one person could do, billions of characters. And what I love the most is that performers back then, I mean, they were just doing it. I mean, it's not like they were inspired. It was just the norm, like nowadays, because there's so much content being produced, it's really easy to be inspired by people. But those guys, the real pioneers, they were just doing it, like they're like, oh, let's just make this cartoon about this wise ass rabbit that's always screwing with other characters. It was just kind of an amazing renaissance. And the fact that these characters are still being turned into new shows, or really well-selling air fresheners. There's still Tweety Bird and Taz air fresheners being sold for your car. I mean, these characters have stood the test of time. So,
Scent of Putty Tat.
Yeah.
Scent of Putty Tat.
Putty Tat.
Yeah. Amazing.
That's how everybody wants their car to smell.
Yeah. I want my car to smell like Mel Blanc.
Oh. Scent
Like
of duck and bunny.
like whiskey and cigarettes from the 1930s. I mean, that's basically it. I mean, that's when it was real. I actually was just driving on Mulholland Drive the other day and thinking, man, wasn't that where he like crashed? Like that famous story of him crashing his his sports car, and then he got into a big accident, and it's just kind of funny that I'm driving some of the streets that some of these old heroes of mine have driven, and it's really brings a tear to your eye.
He's just like crying, just like a guy looking at you in the car, just like, why is he crying? Just looking over.
All my mascara is running, and I'm just staring at him,
Like,
going, "What's up, Doc? What's up, Doc?" Yeah, I'm a mess. I'm just a complete mess.
Right. So, how did you get the role of Stimpy on Adult Party Cartoon? Because that's a big role.
Oh yeah, speaking of classics and people that inspire me, it's one of those things, those weird things that I hadn't even started voice acting for real until that particular situation. Because after I did my internship at Spumco and all the work kind of went away after the Ripping Friends was done, I didn't hear from John for like about a year or two. So originally I'm from Toronto, Canada, so I moved back from doing my internship from Los Angeles. I went back home, I graduated, and then one day I get a call from John Cristofalusi, and he's like, "Hey, you want to work on a cartoon about a cat and a dog?" And I was like, Jesus. I was like, what are you talking about, Who is this, number one? Number two, I was like, oh, crap, does he mean Ren and Stimpy? Well, my gut reaction as a fan first of the original series was, oh my gosh, like, will they get Billy West back to do the voice? He was pretty much one of the reasons why I got into voiceover, and his vocal performances on the original show were amazing. And while we're on that topic, Animaniacs was a huge influence. Batman the Animated Series. So I mean, Billy West, Jim Cummings, Rob Paulson, Jess Harnell, Tress McNeil, Tara Strong, John DiMaggio, Carlos Elizraki. These are all people that inspired me to get into voiceover, and now I'm lucky to say that I actually work with them and are friends with most of them. There's still definitely a handful of folks that I've yet to meet or work with, but the main heavy hitters I've just been a fan from afar, and now having worked with them, it's surreal. But getting back to the whole Ren and Stimpy situation, originally Ren was voiced by John and Stimpy was voiced by Billy. And, there was a movement where John was no longer with the show, and then both the roles were taken over by Billy because he had worked so closely to the show. Now you fast forward now, let's see, that was like 2000, or actually not even 2000, sorry, it was 19, when did the original show end? Like 1990?
I want to say 96 or 97.
96, 97. So there was an era of the show that was done by the original crew. Then Nickelodeon took over to finish the rest of the show, and then it gets canceled, or they just don't pick it up. And then this new channel out of nowhere, like fast forward, it's 2003 now, 2004, and there's this new channel called Spike TV, the first network for men. And what did they do? They're like, we know what men want. They want
cartoons.
Well, no, they want 9 hours of Star Trek: The Next Generation reruns, and then they want Gary the Rat, that was done by Kelsey Grammer. They want Stripperella, that's done by Pamela Anderson, and then they want adult Ren and Stimpy. It's just like
manly,
the most bizarre thing. Like, and it's for me, again, as a hardcore fan, and I'll always have respect for both of them equally. They have both different stories about that situation, and for me, it was you could say it was a battle that happened before I was involved with the show. But yeah, there was the divide in the crew, and now John is back at the helm, and he's making these newer, more Adult Swim before Adult Swim kind of cartoons. And what do you say to that? I was only hired on as a production assistant at the time. I wasn't even considered to be a voice, because the whole time I was keeping my fingers crossed, thinking, man, this would be amazing if, Billy West would come back to do the voice. But that was not the case. They I guess they had reached out to him, and he was very busy at the time too with Futurama. He was already doing Futurama, and there was just no way we could get him on the show. So John and the producers ended up hiring another guy to do the voice, and that didn't work out. And now John his plan A didn't work, his plan B didn't work, and now he was sitting there going, oh my God, like, how are we going to do the show? And, they put out another casting call, and for whatever reason, I was just making photocopies at the time. And I was like, well, hey, look, I like to do voices. This could be something cool. And, and just like thinking back to Mel Blanc, this is the same situation where you look at it and go, there is no way you could say that you could replace Mel Blanc. There is no way you could say you could replace Billy West, because that voice that Billy created that was an iconic voice for him. Like, that was his all the hard years of work that he did on the Stern Show. That was his Larry Fine impression.
Right.
Everyone does a Mo, everyone does a Curly, but who in their right mind considers, and I'll do a Larry impression. That was like an iconic voice for him, and much like Bugs was for Mel Blanc. And truth be told, it's like when I was doing Marvin the Martian, the proof is in the pudding. I walked into a room where 12 guys are doing all of Mel Blanc's characters. Like, it takes 12 guys to replace one man,
right?
Which says a lot. Maurice LaMarche does Yosemite Sam. Billy West did Elmer Fudd. I was doing Marvin. Jeff Bergman did Bugs and Daffy. Bob Bergen does Porky, so on and so on. And with Billy West doing Stimpy, it was like it was tough. It's not like an easy voice to do. So, I mean, I tried my best, and it was what it was. It didn't last too long, but I mean, for me, I equate it to anyone that does a classic character, like the voice of Popeye or something. Like, that's how important Stimpy was and is to me. It's one of those things that I'll always be thankful for that opportunity. And I've actually worked with Billy often, actually, and I always tell him thank you. I always say thank you for doing what you did, because there's so many performances that he's done, and people like Rob Paulson and Jeff Bennett, D. Bradley Baker, all those guys I say thank you to. I probably make them feel really old, but I say that I owe them babysitting money because they raised me as a child. Yeah, it was a very important role for me, and I'm very thankful for it.
All right, and what were your thoughts on Adult Party Cartoon? Because it's kind of a split between Ren and Stimpy fans.
Sure. Here's my thought, and this is something that because I worked at Spumco for so long, I was probably one of the longest running employees of that studio in consecutive years, because they started out in 1992, 1993, right? They started out as a studio of like-minded, pretty much same-aged individuals that were all working on 80s cartoons that they probably didn't like, because they were raised on the original Hanna-Barbera, the original Disney, the original Warner Brothers cartoons, that were all cartoons that were made just to be pure fun. And then the era of animation that they all ended up working in were the 80s, 70s and 80s, which were, cheaper cartoons that were maybe meant to promote toys like Transformers or
He-Man.
Yeah, the stuff that I grew up watching that I loved, like, they got me. I bought almost every Transformer, every G.I. Joe, every Ninja Turtle. Like, that was my era of animation. I grew up on reruns of Hanna-Barbera too. Like, I loved Flintstones and Jetsons and Bugs Bunny, but I also loved, Transformers and Popples and Alf. You know,
I haven't heard the name Popples in a long time.
believe me, I am just the biggest cartoon nerd you'll ever meet, and I'm always a fan first. Like, being in that documentary, I know that voice. I even during the screening, even though I knew I was in it, I was still sitting there looking at the screen, going, "Oh my God, these guys are my heroes," And then I see myself in that documentary. I'm like, clearly that's a mistake. I don't know why I'm in this documentary.
Not worthy.
Yeah, exactly. Wayne's World, man. We're not worthy.
Not worthy.
Yeah, but that crew of Spumco, that first season and a half of Ren and Stimpy was their love letter to original Hanna-Barbera and original Warner Brothers cartoons, and it was such a strong message that you could tell the people that were on it were like, we're going to make a cartoon that's going to make a difference. Now, when that all ended, the years Spumco that went on after that were, it was John Kay and a bunch of younger folks, like more teacher-student situation. So I feel like it was tough to make something that you're gonna say, oh, it's the new Ren and Stimpy's, and it's like the generation that grew up on it were working on it, and I feel like it's hard because you want to get the approval of John because he is a master at what he does, but I feel like, and believe me, I think the Ren and Stimpy that we worked on ended up looking beautiful, but I feel like the message. It was tough. It was a tough balance. And also, what it had going against it was the fact that we were able to have such free reign, I think. Whereas the original series had the censors. And whether or not it's a fact that it was always them trying to slip one past the radar.
Oh, my gosh.
I feel like that kind of pressure helps. Now, when you say that you could do all the vulgar things that you always wanted to do, that could be something that could work against you, because I think that there was a charm to the taboo of like, whoa, was that in a kid's cartoon? Versus something that is like completely like, well, those are boobs uncensored.
Yep.
Like there's mixed reactions. I mean, I feel like it was a very beautiful cartoon, but there's something to be said about the original crew of Spumco, that they were on a mission. Clearly, they were on a mission, and those original episodes will always be my favorite. I don't know. That's just me, and I even worked on it. And I enjoyed my time. And I'll tell you one thing though. The one thing that I love working with that crew, there was a U.S. crew and there was a Canadian crew that I worked with. These are all people now that are making the stuff that is on TV. These are all people that I'm still friends with and are all making their own shows. So it was an experience that I'll never forget. Clearly, because I still talk to these folks. Right. A lot of them work on Wander Over Yonder. A lot of folks work on a lot of cool Nickelodeon stuff, Warner Brothers stuff.
A lot of great shows.
Yeah, they're all over the place.
Right. And as you've said, you were somebody who collected Ninja Turtles and He-Man stuff. What's it like being a voice on the new Ninja Turtles? Because now you're Tiger Claw.
Yes, Tiger Claw. This is my real voice. They said, just talk Asian. That's all we want.
I tell you, I pinch myself every day. I get to sit in a booth and you hear Rob Paulson doing his Donatello, and his voice is just so iconic as, I mean, boy, I can't even tell you. Yakko Warner, Raphael, The Mask. He's been Pinky and the Brain, of course. But to hear him don the purple mask as Donatello is something else. And then you have Sean Astin doing Raph. I had a brief opportunity to meet Jason Biggs doing Leonardo. And Greg Sipes is Michelangelo. How much more perfect can you...
I don't know how you cannot make that any more perfect, honestly.
Yeah. Greg Sipes is Michelangelo. There's not even a role he's playing. But then you Ciro Neely and and Brandon Auman. I've known them for many years, and this was such a match made in heaven as far as animation director, executive producer, writer. You know, they're two of the most generous people that I know, and the most talented. Clearly, when you watch the show, again, speaking from a fan's point of view, I could tell that there are people that work on this show that really care about it. You know, the
Right.
fact that you get a Paulson in from the original series to do a role just speaks so much volume. And Meredith Lane, who's one of the main casting folks, and Gene over at Nickelodeon, he's one of the head casting guys. They know what they're doing when they're bringing people in. Now Tiger Claw, it's like he's an all new character.
Right.
So what I love most about that is that I get to set the tone for this character, and he is such a badass. I always play like short, fat, dumb characters. A lot of them villains. And Tiger Claw is definitely one of the coolest guys I've ever gotten to play.
Yeah, because I honestly think it's one of the best cartoons on right now. I really do.
Yeah,
It's like,
it's one
I'm
of the ones
amazed.
I from season 1 up until now, the production values have gone way up, and you know they just know how to do action and comedy and make it cartoony but real at the same time.
Ciro's worked on some of my favorite shows, like Teen Titans. He worked on that. Avengers, Mightiest Heroes. He's worked on some of my absolute favorite shows.
Mm-hmm. And
So,
he's
like-
made some too.
Yeah, and Greg happens to be in all of them. Now that I think
Yeah.
about it.
Yes, they are chums.
Yeah.
I got to work with Ciro on this very was a one-off, so it's a very exclusive Super Friends cartoon
Oh,
that
yeah.
he made it for Fisher Price and Warner Brothers, and I got to do the voice of the Flash, one of my favorite DC superheroes, and Mr. Freeze, and it's like one of the coolest things I have on my resume. And I mean, it was a one-off, but it's one of my favorite versions of Super Friends since the original 70s and 80s.
And I've also noticed, because one, you do all these voices, but you're also not to feel like I'm like kissing your ass or anything, but you are also a great impressionist, for one thing.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
'Cause-
It's one of those things where sometimes you just don't know you can do these things until you're asked to do it. The most recent example of like voice matching that I'm doing right now is I'm doing the voice match for Paul Giamatti.
I was about to say on Triple
Yeah,
Pass.
it's like who wakes up and goes, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna do my Paul Giamatti."
I'm gonna do
today."
Paul Giamatti today.
I just gotta pretend like I'm biting my own shoulders. I'm trying to eat my own neck. But I love Paul Giamatti. He's such a good actor, and it's weird. It was just on TV the other day. His performance from the Howard Stern movie Private Parts
Yeah.
is like one of like the most like, he is just so seething and gross in that movie. I know his name was Kenny in the movie, but they called him Pig Vomit. And it's like, he's like, look at this guy. We have to call him Pig Vomit because he reminds me of a pig and makes me want to vomit. It's like, oh, Howard Stern is the Antichrist. And it's like one of those things where he knows what his voice, I mean, I'm sure he hears his own voice and knows how to push it and knows how to just create a character. And in Turbo, he plays Chet, this super hyper extreme worrywart.
Yeah.
And, he never gets to do the fun stuff. Sometimes he does, but he's always the one. And it's funny. It always goes with the characters that I play. I always play like the Lisa Simpson type characters where everyone's having a great time, and he's like, I don't know if that's such a good idea. Maybe you shouldn't be standing on that. You might fall down. But yeah, it's one of those characters that I guess I kind of have a knack for playing those
Like
those characters.
the Woody Allen type character.
Yeah, he's a germ freak, and he always buckles up for safety first.
Like,
But the voice mimicry, it's one of those things that it could either just be you kind of don't want it to be your be all end all, because I think as a voiceover artist, my dream is to make the character that kids will one day run around in the schoolyard and imitate. You know, Bellybag on Uncle Grandpa and Badooz on Breadwinners are both, those two are my hopes and dreams of becoming characters that people will like and are original.
right. And I've heard recently that you started doing a stand-up.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess it's been about a year or so since I haven't done it, but the longest stretch I had was about a year or two, year and a half probably, and it's just one of those. It's tough. It's really hard. I gotta give credit to those folks that can make the same joke you've heard over and over again, fresh and new every time you hear it. Harland Williams is one of those guys that gave me my first shot, as well as Carlos Alazraqui, as you know from Reno 911,
Right.
and the Taco Bell Chihuahua, and Rocco's Modern Life. He's the same situation where it's like I've seen Carlos perform stand up back to back, like two different sets, and all the same jokes, but he'll put them in a different order, or just put a spin on it, or just learn how to play with the audience. That it's just like, man, I could hear that joke over and over again because he makes it so funny. Harlan Williams, the same situation where it's like, how did you do that? Like, how did you make the same set so fresh and unique? And for me, it was a balance of like, I just don't have that strong a voice like those guys do, but I also didn't want to fall back on just doing impressions as my set. So I think if I were to do stand-up now, it might be a little bit better because I've gotten a bit older and experienced more stuff. But I don't know. I wake up in the morning and I think about what voice I'm going to do for what cartoon, rather than, oh, I dreamt of a new joke last night and I got to write it down.
Right. Thank you so much for letting me interview you.
Yes.
And one last thing before we stop the interview.
Yes.
But is there any advice you can give to aspiring actors or voice actors?
Well, I mean, the one thing I could say is, continue to make stuff. Make stuff, even though it's hard to wait on people to get your start because there's so much stuff being made. If you could try to make your own stuff, I say go for it. Find cartoonists in your local area, or try to put yourself out there. I still do it. I still go to, UCLA or USC, and I do voices for animation students for their thesis films, because these might be the people that could be your boss one day. And there's no other better way to get experience than actually doing it. And even if you just do it, do voices on your own at home, record it, listen to it back. These will be the things that will build up your demo reel. And when you do make that demo reel, make sure that you could put a few impressions on there, but originality is key. Even if you're doing the voice of a knight in shining armor, or an evil wizard, or a king, or superheroes, or a little boy, or an old man, or an old woman, make sure that it's your old man or old woman. And yeah, just show off a lot of variety. And I guess that's about it. I mean, after that, you got to find an agent.
And thank you.